Hey everyone, glad to be with you today. This is going to be a really exciting video today. I think this is going to be really cool. As you can see on the screen behind me, in front of me, wherever it shows up in the video, we have a meme generator. That's right. We're going to be building our own meme generator using Java Spring Boot and Angular. I don't even know what Angular it is. The latest Angular. I think Angular 14 or maybe 16. I don't know. It changes every week. I think it's 14. I'll put a link in the description, definitely, for those who are really looking for the specific version of Angular. But luckily, we're not using, or I don't think I'm using anything that's 14 specific, which hopefully doesn't get deprecated next week when they release 15 or 16. Anyways, joking aside, yeah, we've got the demo in front of you. It is a meme generator, one of those interesting apps that you just really needed to be built, right? You really wanted to learn how to build. It's actually quite I won't say complex, but it's semi-complex. You're working with images, you're working with uploads. We're doing some resizing. We're doing some text with painting on the HTML5 canvas and making use of an API built with Java Spring Boot. So let's scroll down a bit here just to give everyone a look of what you will be able to build yourself. And here's all the photos and memes that I've added. And if we go on an individual one does not simply make a meme generator. As you can see, I'm really zoomed in on this browser, so it looks gigantic. But trust me, or let's go to normal size. This is normal size. Not bad. And then we'll be able to click on the download button and it will download, ready to be posted on any social media or Slack or any chat channel that you've got going. And then we can, of course, create our own. We've got the new meme button or a new meme link at the top in the navigation. So we want to choose a file that we want to add. And we scroll down to, let's say, pick a photo. And let's start with, this is a Doctor Who meme. No, that's a pretty terrible meme image. Anyways, or meme quote. Sorry, not meme image, but meme quote. So you'll notice that we have text that as we enter it, it updates as we're entering it on the top and the bottom line, and it is updating automatically as we're entering the text for line 2. And then we can hit the generate button, and this will send an API request back to the Spring Boot server. And then it'll show up at the bottom of our list. This is a Doctor Who meme, howdy. And then if we click on it, we'll be able to see it in its full glory and be able to hit the download button to again download the image that we've stored. So that's the demo for this application. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. It's a mix of a few tutorials that I've already put together. Anyways, I think everyone will enjoy it, and I can't wait to get started. Let's get going. First things first, we are going to be on desktop audio. First things first, we are going to go on start.spring.io. as what we've done with all of our Java Spring Boot projects. We're choosing a Maven project, Java. We're going to use 2.7.4. Pretty soon we'll be able to use 3.0.0. We'll leave the group as com.example, and then the artifact we'll just use Spring Boot meme generator, if I could spell that correctly. And we can leave description alone, package name alone. We'll leave it as a jar file. We'll be using Java 19. Okay, and for dependencies, let's go ahead and add the dev tools. Let's add Lombok. Let's add Spring Web. And let's add H2 database. And let's add, we don't need ThymeLeaf this time. We're going to let Angular take over for all of our HTML front-end markup. So then we'll be needing, what else? Spring Data. And think that's it. I think we can leave the rest. Oh, we'll need Spring Security. Go ahead and let's hit that generate button and download it to your machine. Okay, so we've opened up the project in IntelliJ, and now let's go ahead and edit the application.properties file. Let's do what I normally do in my projects, and that is just define our server port. By default, it's port 8080, and let's just keep that going. And then I'm going to cut and paste in my local H2 database config that I've been using for pretty much all the projects here so far. We're creating a database called demo stored in the data folder. We're defining a driver class name of H2 driver. We're giving our console a username of admin and password, and defining the database platform. And so then let's go ahead and enable the H2 console properties. So this will enable the H2 console, and this will give it a path of /H2 console when we're ready to reference it on the browser. And then we want to set up our Hibernate DDL auto to update. So basically what this will do is it will update the schema as you keep restarting the server, depending if you've added any new objects or not. And then one other new thing that we're going to need, which will come in very handy shortly, is we are going to be using a ant path matcher strategy for our path match. And again, it's not really important knowing what this is. Basically, it's just letting Spring Boot know that we're going to be defining a regex path for our client controller to forward all of our requests over to our Angular app. But we'll get there when we get there. So just put that in for now. And so what I've decided to do is structure this as define the model for each of these meme items that we're uploading as a meme item. So I'm going to be creating a model. So in our Java folder, in our com example Spring Boot meme generator project root, let's create a package and just call it models. And then let's create a new Java class and call it MemeItem. So we're going to create a few things on the server first and then go into the Angular bits. Just so I don't know, I just wanted to do it this way. So let's use the entity annotation along with data, which gives us a lot of helper methods. And then we want to implement serializable. And then let's go ahead and generate an ID field. Generated value of strategy equals generation type auto or sequence. We can use auto or sequence. Private long ID. There we go. Let's go ahead and resolve these things. And then let's give each meme item a title. And then one little difference that we're creating is we're going to be storing each meme image as a blob of bytes, a byte array. And then let's see, local date time created at, and then private local date time updated at. Let's import the class. Okay. And then let's create a override of the toString method. So public string toString, just to help us debug. Return MemeItem plus ID equals. Oh, we don't need that. We need that. Okay, so now we got the model defined, and let's go ahead and create a repository for it as well. So let's create a package called repositories in our project root, and then a MemeItem repository. And it's going to be an interface. And this will be the link between our model and our database. So let's use the repository annotation, and we are going to extend a CRUD repository, MemeItem long. Okay, let's get all these, settle all these dependencies. Okay, and then let us create a, what we're going to do first is let's create the, what I'm going to be calling a SPAController, so single page application controller. So within the root of the project, let's create a new package and call it controllers. And let's create one called SPAController. And then what this will do is, let's give ourselves a regular controller annotation. And let's do a get mapping. For now, what we're going to do is just use a, so what we're going to do is we're going to return, basically we're going to forward everything to the root default, the default root. This will be a little bit easier to see once we start getting the Angular app going. But what we're going to be adding here is some regex to kind of force any path that's not mapped in our security controller into the root index page where Angular will take over. So we've got some freaky regex going here. And all this is going to do is just to make sure that any web URL on the browser, like if you've got parameters, if you've got sub paths that you're attaching to the request, if none of it is going to be handled, then it will detect that with the help of this regex, and then forward you to the root, the default, basically the default page, which is where Angular will take over. I've tried to say that 3 times now. Hopefully it makes sense as we get going and as you start experimenting with it. I think it'll become clear what this regex is doing. I guess it's not really, well, no, it is regex. It's string annotation, path-specific string annotation. Okay, enough of that. So we've got our SPAController, which redirects everything to the root page. We've got our model of MemeItem. We've got a repository. So let's go ahead and let's create a service. So let's go under new package and let's call it services, and let's create a MemeItemService. And we'll just use this to create helpers to interact with the repository. So let's see, let's use auto-wired, and we will MemeItemRepository, MemeItemRepository. Okay, and then so what we'll need is let's do a get all. So public iterable MemeItem get all memes, return MemeItemRepository find all. Okay, let's go ahead and resolve all these red lines. Okay, and now let's do a save, or let's do a public optional MemeItem. Let's get the get single one, so get by ID, long ID, and then let's return MemeItemRepository find by ID. Let's resolve these dependency lines. Okay, and then let's save. Let's go ahead and write a save function. So we're going to be taking in a MemeItem as a parameter. MemeItem. Okay, so if MemeItem get ID, if the ID is still null, it means we haven't saved it yet. It hasn't been persisted. Then we want to set the created at to local date time now. Otherwise, set the updated date timestamp to right now as well. Local date time.now. And then let's go ahead and return MemeItemRepository repository.save MemeItem. So it's going to save the given MemeItem without an ID, and during the saving process, it'll generate an ID for the item, and then that's what it'll return back out to our service. And just in case, let's go ahead and write a delete MemeItem, and let's do a MemeItem repository delete MemeItem. We could also do we have a delete by ID function? Yeah, we also have a delete by ID function. So if you would rather pass in an ID instead, in fact, let's do that. Long ID. So then let's delete by ID. Booyah. Okay. So we've got our service created, we've got our repository done, our models, model, our controller, and everything looks good from the Spring Boot side of things. So now what we want to do is notice how, hopefully it'll show up on the video. Maybe I'll zoom in during this part. Notice how the resources templates folder is empty. This is where we would normally put the ThymeLeaf view if you're using ThymeLeaf. That's where we would put the HTML pages. And the static folder is used by Spring Boot for, I don't like the word static because it's not really static. It's like all of your JavaScript files, CSS, images, basically any assets that you want to serve up for the front end, for the client, sorry. So I would prefer, who am I to say this, but it would have been, I think it would have been a little bit more accurate to call this folder assets instead of static, but whatever. Static it is. It won the coin toss. Static won the arm wrestle, whatever the team used to determine the name of it, because naming things are pretty hard. Okay, so let's go ahead and restart this after all that blabbing. And with the other demo server stopped, this one should be starting without any issue. So we've got our security stuff starting up. So I'm thinking before we do anything else, we're going to have to update some of the security here. So let's go ahead and stop this. And let's go back up to our package, or our root folder, sorry, and let's create a new package, call it config. And then let's go ahead and create a new file called WebSecurity config, or a new Java class. Call it WebSecurity config. And what we need to do is use the enable web security annotation, as well as the enable global method security annotation, if I could spell correctly. And we'll be using pre-post enabled equals true and secured enabled equals true. Resolve those. Okay, good. And now we are going to define our filter chain. So let's use the bean annotation. We're going to be returning a security filter chain, and this is where we define all of our allowed URLs, paths. Sorry, throws exception. Okay, resolve all those. Okay, so what we're going to do is we want to enable cores because we're dealing with our JavaScript server, and CSRF we want to disable. And let's see, what else do we want to do? headers, frame options, want to deny, and we want to add in our authorized requests. This will let us bypass Spring Security on the root default URL, default path. So let's use ant matchers of slash, and we want to permit all. So permit every operation, get and post, and then what we want to do is use one called ant matchers. And you know what? I'll update that later when we get to the API. So let's leave this here, and then let's return HTTP build. And why is this one red now? So let's see cores and serve disable. Maybe we don't need that. Okay, we don't need the extra and there. All right. So basically the most important ones are the authorized requests, and we want to make sure that all of the requests to the root default mapping go through. They're all accepted. So let's go ahead and start up the server. And we'll watch it restart. And then let's open up a browser. And we get our error page, which is actually a good sign. Oops, let's blow that up. Our standard white label error page, it's a good sign. It means that things have made it through our security and are directed to a page that we don't yet have, which is our Angular work. So let's take a break with the Spring Boot server stuff here, and let's flip over and use Angular. And let's see. I'm not doing this on purpose, folks. I'm actually just trying to find the version number. Let's see. Docs. Let's see. Oh, if we go right to GitHub. Let's see what version. Okay, 14.2.3. All right. So we are using version 14.2.3 for this application. And so what we want to do is use you can drop down to a terminal window on your machine. I think you can use one right inside the IntelliJ IDE, but I kind of prefer dropping to a terminal window just so it keeps things straight for me while I'm working with it. Anyway, enough blabbing. Let's increase the font on that a little bit. Okay, so we're in the folder that we're on. What we want to do is we want to let's clear all that first. Okay, so what we want to do is type in npm install and then -g for global and then Angular CLI. And if you don't have it yet on your system, this will run out to the npm package repository, install the Angular CLI tool that we'll be using to work with Angular. Dear me, I've already forgot the version. Angular 14.2.3. Okay, so we are in the root of the project now. So let's go into source main. And we should be at the level where we see a Java folder and resources folder. So right here is where we should be creating our new app. So let's go ahead and type in ng new frontend. And then it'll run the CLI tool, and it'll give us some extra prompts here to help us out. So would you like to add Angular routing? Yes, we would. Which style sheet format would you like to use? I just want to keep it at CSS right now. And then it will go ahead and do its thing and install all the packages from npm. And this, I must admit that before this video, it's been a while since I've touched Angular, but I must say that I had a pretty good experience with it, using this to put together this meme generator. I know I make a lot of jokes about Angular versions changing constantly, and they do kind of do, but at the same time, I know that the team behind it worked just as hard as everyone else trying to get a good product out there. So hats off to all the maintainers of Angular. Okay, so we've got a main folder here that we're in. If we do a quick dir, we'll see that we've got a front end folder created. So if we go into front end, you might also remember, or not, maybe not remember, but just I should highlight, that's a better word, that our server is still running. The good thing about using a tool like Angular or React or Ember or anything else that has its kind of own mini environment is that you can kind of develop it on the fly and update it up until the point where you need to integrate it more with the server. Then there might be some server restarts as you configure things on both the client and the server. But there's a period of time where you're just starting out designing on the front end where you can just keep things moving fairly quickly. So with all that talking aside, what we want to do is in the front end folder, you'll see that the Angular CLI tool creates a whole bunch of files for us. Again, I'll try and zoom in and highlight these. You've seen a package.json before, and this is sort of the root, the command, what I call the command module when we're in there, because that's kind of the point where we can start the whole server. So back on our console, we're in the front end folder. Let's just type in ngserve and then open, -- open. So what this will do is this will start the development server up and running. It will package up the JavaScript that we do have in the project, and then it will open a browser window to that page. So let's give it a few seconds, and voila, here we go. So we've got a whole bunch of default stuff coming up here. So this is how you know that the server is running, or not server. This is how you know how the Angular built-in web server, dev web server is running. So right now, as you might be able to see, this is on port 4200. That's the default port that the Angular CLI uses. So let's go back into our editor. And now let's look at the Angular JSON file. This is the configuration file for Angular projects. So you can define quite a lot in here, and I'm really happy to actually see that. I wish they had this same ability with the Create React App CLI tool for the React side. If they had some kind of config file that you could pass in or define, I realize how difficult setting up a build structure is. So I'm not saying that lightly, but it would be really nice to have some kind of similar ability to configure React projects. So we've got a bunch of things in here. So what we want to do by default, when we build our Angular app, the final destination will be in front end dist. dist. It'll create its own front end dist folder. So what we want to actually do is everything we generate, our application, we want to stick it down in the resources static folder. That's where we want to put it. So let's go ahead and open up the Angular JSON file. And then let's go into the architect build options, and then output path. Instead of dist front end, we want to use //resources /static. So we want everything in this static folder over here. I believe everything else is okay. Sorry, I'm just going through my notes to make sure I didn't forget anything. Okay, so one thing we also should do right now, just before it confuses us later on, is we need to set up a proxy between our Angular application, our Angular dev application, sorry, and our Spring Boot server, just because they're running on different ports. So when it comes time to communicating back and forth, we're going to be running into some issues if we don't do this. So let's go ahead and go down to the, and then let's create a new object here called options. And then what we're going to define is a proxy config, and we're going to be referencing a source proxy.conf.json. And then let's go ahead in our front end folder, in the source folder, let's create a new file and just call it proxy.conf.json. And or JSON, however you want to say it. And then let's create a new object, and our path of API, our target will be HTTP localhost port 8080, if you haven't already guessed. Secure false, because we're not using HTTPS right now. And let's use a log level of debug, just to make sure that we capture any errors, any problems we might have. Okay, so that's all we're going to need to do to set up a proxy. So again, for the target, use whatever dev and port that you want to. Just make sure that it's the one that the server is listing on. So if you've defined your server to be listing on port 3000, then you set this to port 3000. I think you get the idea. Okay, so we've got that set up. Let's go ahead and in the app.component.ts, app.component.html. This is the front end markup that we saw in the demo that's showing up by default. Let's see, is it still here? Right, so that's all this markup. So let's go ahead and let's erase everything. Yoink. And then let's just go back to the, let's take a look. Okay, let's go back to the command line and let's bring in Bootstrap. So let's hit Control-C there to stop the dev server from running. Okay, so within the source main front end folder, let's type in npm install bootstrap -- save. Okay, and then Bootstrap will be pulled in. And then within the styles.css file, where is it? Right here, which is in the source folder. We've got a helpful comment here. You can add global styles to this file and also import other style files, which is exactly what we want to do. So we want to import bootstrap dist css bootstrap.min.css. Perfect. And then we are going to, whoops, open the wrong window. Then we're going to type in ngserve again, and it will rebuild everything, set up the dev server, do its thing. Hopefully all of you are having a good day wherever you are in the world, and hopefully this is helping you so far. If you like it, give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment down below if it's giving you any help so far. So let's go back to our browser, and it's now, oh, hit the wrong button. So we've got a, get out of full screen mode. There we go. So I've got the console up, and I know it's going to be tiny on the video. Whoa, that's super tiny. And there's no way that I know of to blow up or zoom in. I can. Okay. Scratch what I was just saying. So there's the console. Here's the, okay, let's not make it 200%. That's a little too big. Let's make it 150. Okay, so we've got just some JavaScript coming out, you know, blah, blah, blah. We're running in the dev mode. Make sure you don't see this when you're in production. Okay, so let's go back to the terminal. And what I want to do is create a new component which will act as a navbar for our application. So what we're going to do is type in ng generate component navbar. And so ng generate is just a helpful thing through the tool to generate some boilerplate objects and fill out some Angular things for us. I'll show you right now. Sorry if I sounded so vague there. So we've generated a new folder called Navbar in our app folder. Now notice how on the command line we've called the component Navbar. And so what, if you look in the Navbar component.ts, you'll see that Angular pre-appends the components with a app dash, which I believe is defined in the Angular. I wouldn't be surprised if it was in the angular.json. Let's do a file find. It's not. Okay. App prefix. Yes, prefix. Okay, so here we've got a prefix of app, so we could change this to whatever we want. I'm not going to do it right now because it would just screw everything up, but we could call it like yo. And then every component we generate would then have the yo dash component name, whatever we defined it as, which again I think is really cool. It keeps you being able to create a flexible library if you want, component library, and you can give it. This is an easy way to define a prefix for all of your components. Anyways, let's go back to the navbar. We're not going to be really doing anything much with it code-wise, so we're just going to have a very basic. You can see the generated HTML in the component is just navbar works, which again is really helpful when you're spinning up and want to make sure that your component is actually doing what it's supposed to do. So let's go ahead and in the app.component.html, which is the root HTML, the root component, sorry. This is the one that we cleared out. Remember, it had all those to-do comments, all the boilerplate. So what we want to do here is we want to now say app navbar. We'll use the app navbar element. And we haven't touched anything in the navbar HTML. It's still navbar works. And let's go back to our browser. I think this, is it running? No, it's not running. So let's use ngserve. Let's get that up and running. And here we see navbar works. Right on. That's pretty cool. So we can see right away that the component is being picked up correctly. And let's go back to our editor. And now let's create an actual navbar using, I'm just going to paste in a whole bunch of HTML here, so warning. Yep, this is a lot. Okay, so let's go through this. This is a template navbar that I just copied from the Bootstrap 5 documentation. So it's really nothing special other than a normal navbar. So we've got a navbar with a container built in, a brand. I'll try and explain these router link things later. But this is a without trying to get too much into detail. The square brackets are kind of Angular specific syntax when we see a square bracket in our HTML, in our Angular HTML, it is interpreted as we're basically binding an object to properties. So we're binding the router link object to whatever we're trying to pass into it. So in this case, it's going to be generating a href for the home, the default URL. And down here, further down, for this nav item, we've created another one for, again, for the link home. Let's just remove that active. There we go. And then we're creating another nav item for new meme, and this will be using a router link of /MemeItem. So I'll show you what that looks like in the HTML. Let's go ahead and refresh, or let's go back to our browser. We don't need to refresh. So it's already got the it's already got the navbar up and running in front of us, for us, which is fantastic. And we've got the home label and the new meme label as well. So let's go ahead and hover over those and inspect them. So under home, you can see that Angular has put in a bunch of things on its own, but it's replaced in the markup. It's replaced that router link syntax with this ng reflect router link of / and then href. It creates an actual href of / for the home. And then for the new meme link, it's also using the ng reflect router link of /MemeItem, which is what we defined, and an href of /MemeItem. So if we click on anything, or if we click on meme generator or home, then we'll stay at home. But if we click on new meme, of course, it won't know what to do. So we get a lovely giant block of errors there. Back in our app.component.html, we've got the app navbar. So what we want to do is we want to then use a property called router outlet. And what this will do is this will let us update it'll let Angular update the view templates, the HTML templates, depending on where we are in the app. So where our URL is, it'll use the right component and update things within this main layout. So we're turning our app.component.html into basically a main layout type of folder. So the app bar will show up, or not the app bar, the nav bar, the app nav bar component will show up on every HTML page that is in our Angular app because it's kind of outside of this router outlet markup. You'll kind of be able to see what's going on here shortly. So back in the app routing module.ts, this is where we define all of the routes, the front end routes for our application. So it's empty right now. So let's go ahead and let's create a new route. So let's call it a path of empty. So basically the default path, which is an empty string here in this case, in Angular terms, and we'll give it a component name of HomeComponent, which doesn't exist yet. So what we're going to do is go back to the console window, and it highlights it here as well. HomeComponent doesn't exist. So let's do ng generate component home. And then it will do its thing. And we now have a home component up in the home folder. So let's go back in the router here and let's add an import statement. And so it should find it from /home/home.component. Okay, so again, we haven't touched anything in the home component. Let's go back to the console window. Let's ng serve. So what should happen is by default, it should serve up the navbar as well as just the home text saying this is home val, whatever it is. Homeworks. Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. Homeworks. Okay. So what we want to do when we come to the home page of our app, if you remember from the demo, if you recall from the demo, we want to go to the API and fetch all of the meme items that are in our database and then display them on a list on this default homepage for our app. So let's go into the home component and we can leave our server running, our dev server running, sorry. So in the HomeComponent.ts file, what we're going to do is we're going to create a variable to store all of the meme items from the server. So we'll call it MemeItems. We'll give it a type of any, and it's an array. And then we'll also create a data URL, and this is just a helper string of just API meme items. So this will be the API path name to get to our MemeItemsController, which we'll soon build back on the server. Okay, so in the constructor, what we're going to be also needing is if you pass something into the constructor of an object, then what Angular will do is by default it will then attach this whatever variable name you give to the property being passed in. It will be appended and it will be available within this home component as this.http. So what we want to do when the component starts up, so the ng-on-init function, whoops, my careless fat fingers, we want to call this .get MemeItems, which we'll create in a few minutes here. And then we want to use something called subscribe. Again, I'll go through this. And we're working with a response from the server. And we're going to assign this MemeItems. Remember, we created it, we defined it, declared it as an array up here. This MemeItems equals response. And then just for fun, let's console log the MemeItems. Okay. So let's create a function now called get MemeItems. Get MemeItems. And then what we want to do is return this.http. Remember, we've declared it up here within the constructor, which makes it available for us to use within the component. So this HTTP, and we want to get this data URL. That's it. And so what this subscribe does is Angular works on a system of observables. That's sort of it's a pattern, a sugar around objects that you normally work with in JavaScript. So in this case, instead of promises, Angular uses observables. Maybe that's an easier way to phrase it. So just like a promise, you've got an ability to chain promises together, saying, then, and then finally error out if there's an error, if you have multiple promises. And a subscribe from an observable in Angular basically performs more or less the same way. I don't want to detail it too much because I'm going to explain it incorrectly, and then I might confuse you when you're jumping back and forth between projects. But essentially, at a high level, it acts similar to a promise, but it gives you a little bit more abilities. Syntactic sugar is the term being used everywhere, which I'm not crazy about, but whatever. Let's just keep going. So we're calling the HTTP client with a GET request to this data URL, which is /API MemeItems. And then for the response, we're going to be taking in the response, and we're going to be assigning the response, whatever comes back, to the array of this MemeItems, and then just console logging everything. So let's console log the response, just to make sure that we're working with the right things coming back. So it'll restart for us, and let's go back to the browser, and we should see an error, of course, because we don't have, we forgot to inject it into the module. Okay, so now we have to go back to the, this is no biggie. When you're using Angular, what you normally have to do in the app.component.html file is sometimes you have to declare modules that you're using. So let's declare the HTTP client module within the imports, and then let's add an import statement, so it'll show up as import HTTP client module from Angular common HTTP. And we're also going to be needing the form module. So let's go ahead and add that as well to the imports array. And then let's, is it forms? Oh, it is forms module. Okay, I misspelled it. Forms module. And then let's go ahead and add an import statement for it, and it'll show up right here as well. And that's pretty much all we need to do. So notice how the generator automatically attached our Navbar component and the home component into this ng module declarations array. I forgot to highlight that as we were creating our components. So all of your components will show up here, and it's one of those places that the generator injects for you without you even knowing what it's doing, just to help you out. Okay, so let's go back to the browser and let's let it restart. And of course we get a 404 on the API MemeItems because we haven't yet created the method for it. So let's go back into the editor and let's go back to our server. And let's stop the server because we're going to be just working with the API here for a little bit. And let's go back down into the controllers folder of our Spring Boot meme generator root drive. And let's create a MemeItem controller, MemeItemController. And this will be using the REST controller annotation. Give it a request mapping of /API/MemeItems. Okay, and then we want to use the auto-wired annotation, and we want to link up our service. So private MemeItemService, MemeItemService. Okay, and then what we want to do is a get mapping for basically get all. So get mapping, public iterable, MemeItem, get MemeItems, and we want to return MemeItemService get all. And let's go ahead and resolve all these. Okay, so it'll find everything. Let's see, what else do we need? For now, this is all we need. Okay, so we want to get all from our MemeItemService through the MemeItemService, which will in turn go to the MemeItemRepository and return all of the MemeItems there. Pretty cool. So let's restart the service, and let's go back into the browser, which is still running. Into the dev server for Angular, which is still running. And so let's give it a few seconds, and then we'll refresh it. 1, 2, 3. So we still get homeworks, and then now we're getting an empty array back from the service, which is awesome. That's really cool. So we'll go back into the home component on the Angular side, and we will display a table of the data coming back. So let's go into our HomeComponent HTML. Okay, so we've got homeworks. Let's delete that, and let's now type in div class equals container, and then let's create a table. We'll call it table and table striped. And then what we're going to do is just create a t-head section. Oops. If I hit enter too quickly, that's what happens. So we're going to use a display an ID just for fun. Just about every dev demo displays an ID for some reason. I don't know why I do that all the time. Just to basically show that you are working with data from the server, I guess. And then at the end, we want to create a t-body section, and this is where we loop through all of the MemeItems data. So let's type in tr, and then what we want to do is another kind of freaky syntax of Angular is *ng4. And then we want to use let MemeItem of MemeItems. So it's, as you might be able to tell, it's just an iterator, a for loop iterator through the MemeItems array that we've defined within the component. So we're going to create a, for every row, we're going to create a ID. We're going to show the ID, sorry. So we're going to show MemeItem.id. And then in the next cell, we're going to have a element, and we're going to generate a router link using the router link square syntax into MemeItem. MemeItem.id, and then end the array syntax. And then we'll define an image source of data. That's not right. Data : image PNG, and this will make sense in a few minutes. Base64, comma, and then MemeItem.image. And then we'll end this right here. and we will give this a width of 300. We don't want the full size images on the home page, basically just like sort of thumbnails. And then in the final cell, the third and final cell, let's do a MemeItem.created@, just to show the date, because date timestamps are cool. Anyways, so we are declaring we're going to be pulling back, since we're storing the image data as a blob. When it comes back from the server, it will be a blob. Which basically looks like a string. I'll show you in the browser console when we get there. So what we want to do is we want to prepend that with we want to load this up as a data source to the HTML image component element. Sorry. So we're specifying data image/png and then base64, and then passing in the string of our what we're getting from the server. So let's go back to our, let's see, is the div tag closed? It is indeed. So let's go back to our page, and we'll see that nothing is there. We get a table ID image created at, which is great. It just reinforces that things are loading up, but we now don't have anything in the database. So let's go ahead and now let's create a designer component for when we hit new meme. Of course, there's errors. So let's go back into the terminal window. Let's stop the server there, and let's call ng generate component, and let's call it designer. I call it designer because we're designing a new meme, the coolest of all memes. That's what I'm designing. So what we want to do is we want to specify a file upload button, HTML button, so you can click it, find a local file that you've got on your hard drive, upload it to the client, to the browser, sorry, and then write the top and bottom line text on that, as we saw in the demo. So what we want to do is first, let's go ahead and create some HTML. So in the designer component, let's go into the HTML. Designer works. Let's just assume that that's what we get. And let's go ahead and start with creating a container. And then let's create a row. And then let's create a MD6 column. So basically split the row into half. So then in the column on the left is where we'll put all of our controls. So let's just make use of the card Bootstrap stuff. So class equals card body. And then what we want to do is we want to create a form. Let's first create the control to upload the image file. So let's do a label. Let's give it an empty thing. So update. Let's call this upload a meme. Upload an image. How about that? That's a little bit more accurate. Input type equals file. Class equals form control. And accept equals image dash star. So basically when we open the file chooser dialog, it will only accept images. And then let's close off that HTML tag. Okay, and then let's create a another form group. Div class equals form group. And let's do another label for equals empty string. And then let's just call it line 1. And then give ourselves a text box. Type equals text. Class equals form control. And name equals line 1. And then let's do the same. We can just cut and paste this because we want to do a line 2. So now let's call this line 2, and then name is line 2. Okay, then we want to add, after all this, before the end of the form, we want to add a button. So button class equals btn, btn outline primary, btn block, and then mt5. And we will just call this button generate. Okay, so let's take a look and see what it looks like in the browser. Before we get there, so we've created this designer component. We need to update the routes to make sure that we are making use of it. So back in our app routing.module.ts file, let's go ahead and create a new path. We'll call it path MemeItem, and then component designer component. Let's go ahead and add the import statement, which will be /designer component. Okay, so now this should all be restarted by now. Let's go back to the browser and let's hit the new meme button. Cannot match any routes, URL segment meme. Okay, let's just refresh the page. Oh, of course. It would help if the server was running, or dev server. So let's start up the dev server. That's my bad. Okay, let's go to new meme, and we see here, ta-da, we have got our card form, or sorry, not our card form, our card with our form within the card. And so we've got an upload file image. So it prompts us with a file chooser, which allows us to choose any image file. Then we've got a line 1, and then a line 2, and then a generate button. So what we want to do is if the input control here changes, throws an HTML element change event, then we want to upload the image and show it, display it on the right here. So let's go back into the designer component, sorry, or the HTML, and within this markup, so now we're going to go through adding a listener. So we're going to add in round brackets. We're going to be listening for the change event, and then we'll be calling a method called preview, and we'll pass it the event as a parameter, as the only parameter to this preview function. So it's in red, it's showing up in red right now because of course we don't have it defined in our designer component.ts. So let's go back in there and let's type in preview, and where as a parameter we're taking in an event. And then what we will do is we're going to make use of HTML5 canvas to draw the image. Okay. So let's just display a console log, preview file, and then event. Okay, so what we want to do then is first, okay, before we do that, we got to do something else. We have to create a canvas component and then form a link between the canvas component and the design, the inner workings of the design component. We have to create a link between the designer template and the component TS file. So I'll show you that right here. So in the component.html, after we've got everything within this call MD6 on the left, so what we want to do is create a call MD6 to display a canvas on the right hand side. So we wanted to say canvas, and then we want to use hashtag designer canvas, and then we want to give it a width of 700, a height of 800. And then go ahead and close it up. So what this is doing is this is special Angular markup, as you might imagine, to form a link with the component. So we've given ourselves a hashtag designer canvas. So back in the designer component.ts, if you go to the top here, we can create a @viewChild and call it give it a name, designer canvas, which is what we used for the hashtag. Static false as a parameter here. And then we want to call the variable designer canvas of type any. It might be of type HTML element. Canvas element, I'm just guessing right here. But let's keep it as any, just because I like to cheat in TypeScript. Okay, so view child. So basically what this will do is this will create a mapping or a link between the designer canvas, where is it here? Designer canvas, hashtag here, element with the component, so that we can reference it's, you'll see. Sorry. You'll see how we use it. Okay. So down here in our preview, let's go back to our preview function. We want to get the actual native HTML canvas element. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a const canvas equals this designer canvas, which is now mapped to the designer canvas element, and we want to reference the native element. So whatever Angular wraps it around in, we want the native HTML element. And then what we're going to do is create a context and get it from the canvas. So we want to work with the 2D context, so we're going to be calling canvas get context 2D. So now what we're going to do is we are going to create a file reader helper, and then we're going to be reading in read as data URL the basically the image blob that we're uploading. So I'll show it to you in the browser in just a second here. And then what we want to do is on the load event. So on when our file reader finishes reading the data URL and finishes loading it up, it triggers the onload event. So let's console log that out just to be able to see file reader onload. And then let's create a new HTML, or let's create a new image element. So new image. And then what we're going to do is assign the source of the image equal to the target result as string. And again, I'll walk you through it with the help of the browser once we get there. So then let's also attach an onload to image. And what we want to do is context, back in our canvas context, draw image to coordinates 30, 150. And let's leave it at that. Okay, so we've got a preview function, which when it changes with the event of a file being uploaded, it will reference the HTML5 canvas element. It'll create a 2D, or it'll get the 2D context. It'll then create a new file reader. It'll read in the data as a data URL. And then once that's finished, it will then create a new HTML5 image object, set the source to be the result of that load, of that file reader load. And then once that finishes loading, once the image finishes loading, it'll draw it to our HTML5 context. That was a real mouthful. Okay, so let's go ahead here and this will restart, and let's choose a file. And just to show you what's happening here, let's go down to any image. Let's use 1818. I like that one. So now we've got an image showing up here, and you'll notice. So this is the initial event that we're getting within the preview function, and we are working with the target. Is it target files? It is files, right? Yes, it is target files, and then file 0 is our image that we're trying to upload. So we're referencing this first element of the files array within this files list, and then loading that, referencing that data. And let's go back out into the progress event here, and it is already being converted into a base64 string from the file reader. Whoops. Which is then showing up under, I believe we're pulling it under target result. So this is the image data right here. So we're then drawing it to the HTML5 canvas. Okay, so that's not bad. It looks a little huge. So let's go back to our draw image, and let's give ourselves a resize window to put it in. And let's go back here. It'll reset everything. So let's choose a file, and let's just, I don't even know what image this is. Okay, method win world first race. Yeah, they didn't. Anyways, it'll show up here. It's a bit smaller now. The image is a little bit smaller, giving us the ability to work with it. And notice how we have a space up here, which is where our line 1 stuff will come in, and our line 2 stuff will come down under here. Okay, so far so good. So now what we want to do is, as I just went through, we want to be able to update the text for line 1 and line 2 and have it show up on the image. So let's go back to our component HTML, and in the let's go back to the actual view, or let's go back to the actual code. Here we go, designer HTML. So in the form control, in the line 1 form control, let's use now another Angular specific syntax, which is ng model. So we're defining a model as line 1 text. So this will be the model of this input element of this phrase string. And then what we want to do is we want to add in round brackets, we want to add a key up event listener, and we'll just call it, we'll call the function update line 1 text function call. And just to save ourselves time, we'll do the same thing for line 2. So again, we'll do the square bracket, the round bracket, ng model, and we'll give it and we'll define the model as line 2 text. Yes, I noticed it's all in red because we haven't declared it yet in the component, which we will do right now. And so the key up event we want to listen for and call the update line 2 text. And I think we need to no, we don't need to pass in the key, or the event, sorry. Okay, so we've got 4 things that we've created here. We've created a line 1 text and line 2 text models, and then key up listeners of update line 1 text and update line 2 text. So let's go back in the designer component, and at the top here we will declare right under the view child a line 1 text, which is just a string, and a line 2 text, which is another string. So that's those 2 out of the way. And then what we want to do is we want to create 2 methods here. So we want to do we want to create 1 method. Let's do 1 method. So just update line text. Let's just call it that. Update line text. So both, if you write in both, we will update. It'll update both. It'll update all the words. Okay, so we want to do the same thing that we did in the preview function. We want to grab a handle to the canvas. So this designer canvas native element. And then we want to get the context. Canvas.getContext 2D. And then what we want to do is we want to set the, oh, I forgot to set the font. Okay, we'll do that next. So context, we want to fill style, which is the color of our writing. We want to use black. We want to align the text to the center. So text align equals center. And then what we want to do is context fill text, because we're drawing filled text. So this line 1 text 2 uppercase, because all memes are in uppercase. and we want to draw it to the canvas width divided by 2 for an X component and a Y component of 100 so that it shows up on the top of our image, above the image, sorry. And then we'll draw line 2. So fill text. We want to use the same font, the same text align. So line 2 text, 2 uppercase. And then canvas.width divided by 2. And then the Y of, let's just use 700. You might have to play around with the numbers a little bit as you're playing around with this function. Okay. So one thing I wanted to do is, before we even test it out, let's go back into our style CSS. And what I want to do is I found a font on Google Fonts, which is similar to Impact. So if you Google font, Impact font, which is what I normally use for all of my memes, there isn't an Impact font available on Google Fonts. So what there is instead is a font called Anton. So if we do an HTTPS fonts googleapis.com/css2 family equals Anton with a capital A, and let that load up. Okay, so now the server should be running still. Yep. Let's go back into our application. It should restart for us, but just in case. Okay, so let's choose a file. Let's give it, let's go back to our, let's choose a Doctor Who one. Okay, so we've got Spearhead from Space, an image. Not really a meme, but whatever. So this is line 1. Oh boy, look at that. Notice how this text is small and it's all blurred together as it's updated. So I wonder if the same thing is going to happen to line 2. Yep. This is line 2. Ugh. So what's happening there? So what's happening is that we are, Angular is constantly updating the canvas with layering on the text as we're updating it. So what we're missing here is a call to clear the text, clear the entire canvas in between updating the text. So let's go updating the string of the text as we're typing to it. So let's go back into the component, and before we write any text, let's call context clear rect, and we want to clear the entire thing. So canvas.width with canvas.height. And then let's go back to the browser and let's upload a file. And let's use one does not simply. Yeah, let's get a proper meme going here. So one does, oh, look at that. So the text updates properly now, but our image disappeared right away. And we're also not using the Anton font. So let's update the Anton font first. So within this update text function, so after we clear the rect, let's set the text, or let's set the font to be, let's call it 50px Anton. Okay. And then what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to recall our preview function just to make sure that our canvas gets continuously repainted with the image data as we update the text. So what we're going to call is, after the clear rect, the call to clear rect, let's call this.preview. And we need to pass in an event. So what we're going to do is back in the top here, we are going to create a new variable called file event and give it an any type. And then in the preview function, we are going to assign file event, this.file event, to be event. So now in this call to preview, this.file event. And that's all we need to do. And so basically it will go through and basically it won't reload it. it'll sort of reload everything because there is a lot of cache at work, so it's not as expensive as you might think when you're looking at this code. Okay, so let's test it out. Let's go back here. We've got the everything. Let's open up the console again. So let's upload an image, and let's not do. Okay, let's do this one. So C++ logo, why not? And let's do. This is not a meme. Oh my. So we've got now have our text showing up on above and below the image, and it is in a font which looks similar to Impact but not quite, and it's all in caps, and it'll update and also have the image maintain there while we're updating the component or updating the canvas. Now you'll notice that there is a flicker for every time because it's repainting everything. But I'll leave that to you to kind of figure out, to play with and figure out how to get rid of it. I think I know what's going on there, but I won't spend time on it right now. So what we want to do is we now have an ability to, we now have the canvas with our text on it. So when we hit the generate button, we want to basically bundle all of this up and send it to the server. So back in our HTML file, let's add a click handler on the button, and just round bracket click, and let's call it upload image. And then back in the designer component, let's create a new method called upload image, arrow function, and so what we're going to do, let's create a console log uploading image. And then what we want to do is get a handle to the canvas again. Canvas equals this designer canvas native element. And then what we want to do is we want to take the contents of the canvas and convert it to a blob. So const data equals canvas to data URL, and we'll use image PNG. Now we'll create a new form object. So const form data equals new form data. And then what we want to do is form data append image with the data of the image that we've just converted. And then let's create a string to contain our server, our API server, which is luckily localhost 8080. You might be able to get away with not using this, but anyway, remember how we don't have it right now, but remember how in the home component, how we had the HTTP client being passed in as the constructor. So we need to do that again. So let's just cut and paste it from the home component constructor into the designer component constructor. And then what we need to do is this.http.post any, and then let's call it, let's use a squiggly base URL, which is our string of, we're going to be using string interpolation to just use our API MemeItems call. And then we're going to be passing in the form data for this post. And then we're going to be subscribing to the response. And let's just spit that out. Post result, or post response. And then what we want to do is, well, let's get this working first, and then I'll move to the next thing. Okay. So it won't really work because we don't have anything defined on the server, but just to prove it, let's create an image. 49, what's 49? Okay, Cybermen. This is Cyberman, y'all. Okay, so we've got this is Cyberman, y'all. Let's hit the generate button, and we get a 405 because not only do we not have the endpoint, but we don't have cores enabled on our server because we are trying to access our server from a different port 4200. And so cores is a lovely hair-pulling server-side, not nomenclature, but a thing that you have to deal with on the server, as well as a client when you're trying to reference APIs from your JavaScript. You'll come across it constantly. So let's go ahead and fix all that up right now. So we've got a few things to address. We've got fixing up cores, and we've got to write the actual post handler for this API call. Well, you know what? Let's fix cores first, just to show that we're fixing things one at a time. So back in our web security config on the Java Spring Boot side, recall that we've referenced cores here, which is good. So now what we want to do is we want to create another bean. We want to inject another bean, sorry. We'll call it web. We want to return an MVC configurer, cores configurer. Ugh, I hate that function name. Okay, and then what we want to do is we want to call add course mappings. Whoops, we want to return. Yeah, we want to return. Sorry. Registry. Add mapping. So we're going to just any endpoint that we reference, we're going to allow any origin, which is really all the security people out there are cringing at this. We're going to allow any origin, which is basically anyone, any client from around the internet. But we're really only using this locally. And then allowed methods are going to be get, put one day, post, and then we need to also add options because the browser sends an options pre-flight request method. And then so why isn't this okay? So return new web MVC configurer. Let's go ahead and put that in brackets. Ugh, that's totally gross. And then we want to override. Sorry, the IDE is really good gravy. Public void add cores mappings, cores registry. Okay, I apologize for that. Let's fix this up to make it like actually legible. And let's fix up these imports. Okay, so we want to return new WebMVC configurer. We want to provide an override for public void add cores mappings, passing in the cores registry, and then registry add mapping, allowed origins, and allowed methods. Okay. So far so good. So let's see if this, or let's just make sure this fixes our cores issue. So let's restart the server. The JavaScript server should still be running, or the JavaScript web dev server should still be running. So let's go to our browser, and we don't have to refresh the browser side. We can just hit the generate button again. And now we get a 405. Awesome. So this means that the event, the handler, the service handler isn't set up on the server yet, but we're no longer seeing the cores issues anymore. You would not believe how long that took to figure out. It's slightly different for every server configuring cores. Like it's different in Rails, it's different in Node, but the principle is all the same. So what I don't know. Maybe I'll go into cores in a different video. Basically, you just we're doing what we can to take care of it here, but there's no need to kind of get too much into the nitty gritty right now. Let's go back into the MemeItemsController, and we want to create a post mapping to handle the new image that we are saving. So let's use post mapping of empty string again. And let's do a public. We want to return a response entity of question mark, which is basically any type. We want to upload MemeItem, create MemeItem. Let's call it that. Create MemeItem, and we are passing in a request param of image, which is a string of base64 encoded data. So image data. Okay, so let's go ahead within this, and we want to create a new MemeItem. So MemeItem equals new MemeItem. Lovely. Then what we want to do is take a base64 decoder equals base64 get decoder. And then what we want to do is we want to convert the image into, we want to decode the image blob that we're uploading into a byte array that we can store in the database. So decoded, we'll call it byte array of decoded bytes equals decoder, decode, image data, but we don't want to use the, we want to split from this string the first comma, and we want to take the first array of that split string, because the format of or I'll show you in the browser. It's a lot easier to see. Okay, and then what we want to do is MemeItem set image to be decoded bytes, and then MemeItemService save MemeItem. And then what we want to do is we want to re-encode this image data to send back to the send back to the client, sorry, as a response. So we want to take a byte array of encoded, we'll call it encoded bytes, and we'll get the base64 get encoder encode MemeItem get image, and then we'll convert that to a string. So string data equals new string encoded bytes, and we'll give it a char set name of UTF-8. All of this stuff, you really just, all we're doing basically is we're decoding the string. Oops, we have to declare a, and we have to add an exception to this function call, throws unsupported encoding exception. And let's resolve this import class, import class, import class. Let's resolve all that. Okay, so we've got our data, which is now the re-encoded string of our image data into base64. We want to return this back to the client, so let's create a new hash map of type string map equals new hash map, and this just makes it an easy way to return all this as JSON. Spring Boot will convert a hash map into a JSON friendly object for us. So let's create a data object, data property, and assign it the string value of the data. And this hopefully will become all clear when we actually look at the browser. So we want to return a response entity with map and HTTP status OK. So we've created the record. We're now re-encoding the image bytes and then storing them into a hash map, which we are then returning back to the browser. So let's go ahead and restart the server and go back to our browser. We don't need to restart the browser or like refresh the page because we're just calling the API. So now we call it, and we'll see that in the network tab, if you go to the very bottom, the MemeItems here, let's expand this a bit, we can see the payload that we are sending in the post request. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. There's like windows within windows here. Okay, what's easier to see? Apologies, everyone. Hopefully you can see this properly in the video if you're not used to this in Chrome. So on the network tab, we're on the last working request, which was to MemeItems. We're passing in a payload, which remember we're working with that encoded base64 string, which is this part. It's everything after this. It's everything after this base64 comma. So data, image, PNG, base64. That's kind of put there by the Canvas API when it calls to data URL. And then the rest of this is the base64 encoded blob. Let's see, preview. Does preview actually show us the image? Okay, maybe not. Yeah, okay, so this is the actual encoded string right here. So now in the response, we've gotten back what I just showed you in the tab was the response. So in the response, under the in the JSON response, in the data property, we've got the encoded base64 string. So all we need to do to display it is prefix that same data colon image PNG base64 comma and then our string value. So let's before we do that, so we've proven that this method works and that we've returned a result from the server. So what we're going to do is, upon coming back from posting a meme, it's going to go back to the home page of our app, of the Angular side. So let's go back into the designer component TS, and then after the response, what we want to do is we want to call this.router navigate back to the home page. Now you might be saying, what is this.router? Well, that's a really good question. It's another variable that we can pass into the constructor as a private router of router. So basically the Angular router which gets passed into this component constructor. So now we have access to it. We have access to being able to return us back to the home page of the app. So let's go back and, is it running? Yeah, it's running. Okay. Blah. So we're now on the meme designer. Let's choose a, I have to be careful about some of these because I can't remember what all of them are. So we've got our Patrick Troughton Doctor Who one again, and this is line 1, and this is line 2. This is line 1, this is line 2. Let's generate it, and let's come back to this, it's taken us back to the home page, and remember, it's now fetched the existing MemeItems in the database, which is our Cybermen, and now the new one that we've just created. All right, we're well on our way. We are almost done. We're almost done. We've got one more thing to do. Let's see, what's our time at? Oh my goodness. Okay, we're just coming up to 2 hours raw footage here. I don't know what it'll be when I edit this down. Apologies in advance if I'm blabbering on too long here. Okay, so if we click here, it should take us to the detail page of the meme. And we haven't created that yet, so we're now getting a cannot match any roots error. So let's go back to the, we'll stop the server and we'll again create another component, and we'll call this one detail for the detail. So ng generate component detail. Hope I don't run out of hard drive space on that video. I guess we'll find out. Okay, so in the detail component, again, we'll reference it from app.routing.module. Let's since we're passing in a specific ID to that route, what we want to do is call path and then MemeItem/:ID, and then we'll be using the component detail component, and then we'll resolve that reference from detail component. All right, and then let's go back into the detail component. Some of this is going to be exactly the same as some of the other methods that we've already created. So what we're going to be needing in the constructor is, again, let's go into the right one. So detail. What we're going to be needing into the constructor is, again, the HTTP client as well as the activated route in order to reference the ID parameter. So let's resolve these imports. And let's, again, we're going to be loading up the image and drawing it into a canvas. So let's just steal the same things that we've already been doing in our other components and copying them up here. So we're using viewChild, and we're again mapping to a designer class ID, hash ID in the view, which I'll drop in shortly. And let's see here. So on the ng-init, what we're going to do is we're going to be calling this get MemeItem, this route snapshot param map get ID. So we're going to be passing in the ID of the element we're trying to get. And then we want to subscribe to the response, sorry. And then what we're going to do is we're going to assign this MemeItem to be response. And then what we're going to do is, again, get our 2D context, create an image. I'll just cut and paste all of this code, which we've already seen back when we did the designer. So a lot of this is the same code. We're taking a handle to the canvas. We're grabbing a context to be the 2D context. And then we're going to draw the image once we get it. Okay, so then let's call the get MemeItem function. Let's define that right now. So get MemeItem. We're passing in an ID of type any. I think it's an integer, but I just like messing with TypeScript. So this.http get this data URL plus the ID. What do we have here? And then we need to update the HTML to show the entire detail. So detail works. Let's erase that, and I'm going to cut and paste just to make this go a little bit quicker. Let's ignore this download event handler. We'll add that next. So we've got a designer canvas like we've done it before with the hashtag, and then we've got on the right hand side of the page we've got a column of a card styled type to just basically be able to download the image directly to your computer. So let's double check that everything works here and go back to the router. Let's refresh. And I forgot I didn't restart the server. Let's do that now. And it should come back to life any minute. Okay, so we want to click on this first one, and you'll notice that the URL, if you hover over there, is /MemeItem/1. So we want the first, so we want to use a get API MemeItems and then /1, and it's giving us a 404 not found. So maybe there's a let's stop the server because we're gonna have to touch something on the Java side. So in the MemeItemController, let's we didn't add the get single function, so let's do that right now. So let's do get mapping for /squiggly brackets ID, and then what we want to do is return an optional MemeItem. So get MemeItem, and we have a path variable that we're passing in as the ID of the of the meme item we're trying to get. So optional meme item, optional meme item equals MemeItemService get by ID, and then return optional meme item. Okay, so we can return all that. We've got that. Let's restart it. We could clean a lot of this up, but I'll let you do that as experimenting with this client and server project. So let's go back in and refresh, and we should now see the image, which is a bigger format, a bigger image versus the thumbnail, well, sort of thumbnail that's on the home page. Okay, our final step here is when we click the download link, we want to download this image as a file that we could then attach to Twitter or Slack or whatever it is, wherever we want to post our newly generated meme. So let's go back into the detail component, and for the download button, let's now add an event called download. So in that detail component, let's call the download method, and then let's go ahead and create the download function here. So download equals. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to then take the contents of the canvas, save it as another blob, and then kind of not really trick, that's a bad way of phrasing it. We want to create a new link element and then click that link to download the image. I'll show you what we're doing here. So const canvas equals this designer canvas native element, which we've seen quite a few times here already. We want to then take the image as basically a blob. So canvas to data URL image PNG format, and then we want to create a link element. So document create element A, tag name of A. So now link dot download equals, and this is just a name that we want to give the meme thing. So we can call this usually when you download a file from a meme generator, it attaches like a blah, 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 type of file name. So we can do the same thing or just call it meme image. I'll just call it meme image so that you know that this is us renaming the file. The href is going to be the actual image, and then we're going to click the link in JavaScript. So we haven't attached this to the view anywhere, but we're just referencing it as a link element that we're then able to click on, and it will handle the downloading for us. So let's go back to the application. It's now restarted, so everything is working okay. We've got the image, meme image coming in, so let's hit the download button, and it then comes through as a image downloaded that we can then reference and post to social media. Well, all of the source code is going to be available in the description links. I'll put in links to my previous projects if that helps you out. Build up to this one. Let's go back to home. Sure, let's show what we've got here. So we've only created 2 so far in this version. But yeah, please feel free to critique the code or create your own tweaks to this application. I mean, this is kind of not a really friendly or useful display of the memes. Maybe display it more as like a carousel, maybe something fancy like that. Get creative and go nuts with it. It's kind of there for you to play with. And you'll notice that the limitation with this meme generator is that we only have 2 lines on our meme. So there are plenty of meme images which are like up to 4 lines. I've seen 4 to 5 lines, depending on how many squares are in the meme image, how many frames are in it. So it won't be able to handle things like that. It will only be able to handle basic images of 1 or 2 lines to it. But it's a really great start. I had a lot of fun putting this project together. I was impressed. I was more than impressed with the state of Angular right now. as I kind of mentioned in the beginning, I haven't used it for quite a while, since AngularJS, to be honest. And this was pretty refreshing, that things kind of actually, there's a few syntax tweaks that I had to investigate and figure out what was happening. But for the most part, what I wanted to do, I was able to do. I didn't have to fight through a lot of tutorials or a lot of online documentation trying to figure out what the heck is going on with this framework, and why is it not doing what I want it to do. So I had an overall pretty good experience with Angular. What did I say? I've already forgotten the version number. 14, is that what we're using? Let's see. Oh, it's right here in this tab. 14.2.3. 14.2.3. So let's see, is that there? 14.2.3, just as proof. So in the past, not in the past, I always make fun of how often the version number of Angular changes. I think the team has gotten a lot better at making releases that are quite painless to upgrade between one version to another. But in the past, like if you're going from Angular 2 to Angular 6, it was a nightmare. I mean, it's almost better to just rewrite your application. Thankfully, or I won't even say thankfully, but hopefully at this point it's not that bad. Like if you're going from 13.5, I'm assuming there's a 13.5 up to 14.2, then you're gonna have to change maybe a few things, but not overhaul your entire front end. Anyways, I hope you had a lot of fun going through this the same way I did. Give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more like this. Comment down below if there's a type of app you want put together. Maybe I'll try a different front-end framework, or different, I'm thinking of moving into putting together some Rails applications. I've been having a lot of fun with those at work. So, this channel is sort of meant to cover a lot of web development, not just Java Spring Boot. So, but I know these first batch of videos here have been all Spring Boot focused. That was a lot of talk. Okay, hopefully you're having a great day wherever you are. Get another pot of coffee. Hopefully you were able to make it through this one on one coffee alone, but this could have been a 2-coffee tutorial. Hope it was useful for you. Have a really great day wherever you are. Thanks for everything, y'all. Peace.